Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's CX Midday Spark. It's December 1st, 2020, and I'm here with my really good friend, Justin Robbins, and we are here on behalf and being powered by the PACE Association. Justin, welcome.
Hey, Jim, good to be here. December 1st, though, that just, this year has gone on forever, but we're finally in the last month.
Yeah, yes. And
I hope.
well, I don't think the calendar's going to change.
I don't either.
But if it does, I guess we'll just chalk that up to something else as well.
It's 2020.
It is, man. This is going to be a decade of recovery, that's for sure, in a lot of different ways. And that's part of what we're talking about now is how do we get started? Okay, we normally when we go into a year like 2020, we're doing our New Year's resolutions and, those things, take their course the way that they typically do. And however we start the decade. So I think this time we had a leap year to kind of in a different sense to actually get into the real decade. And so part of that is talking about 2021 planning for customer experience leaders. And I think it's important for us to clarify, what does customer experience leaders mean? What's your perspective on that?
So, Jim, I think of customer experience really simply as this: from the very first thing that we do to introduce a customer to who we are. And often that might be the reference of somebody that had an experience. It might be an ad that they had. It might be a product that they receive as a gift, right? Whatever it is, it's from that very first touch point all the way through that life cycle of whatever that person's interaction with you. So I think of customer experience, right, as a pretty wide group of people who are responsible for all of those touch points along the way, right, with what it means to do to serve and meet the needs of a customer.
Some people may look at that. I'm glad we talk about this, because some people may look at it and say customer experience, well, that's not me. I'm in fulfillment. Customer experience isn't me. I'm in heck, IT or whatever the case may be. But the fact is that it is far reaching. I mean, if we talk about being customer centric, being a CX leader affects everyone.
Yeah, and for a while, I contested people who said customer experience is everyone's job. And the reason I contested it, because I was a believer that if it's everybody's job, then in my experience, it becomes nobody's job, because nobody wants to take responsibility for it. But what I believe, right, you may not own the entire customer experience, which I often think is the mindset behind that statement. But I believe that if you're in a company, probably every single role in that company in some way, shape, or form does something that impacts the customer experience. So I think it's important to understand like what that is and the role you play in serving your customers, for sure.
Yeah, most definitely. And so it's contact center. It is, so, people who are supporting the experience across the entire industry. It's the people who are doing, the survey measurement. It's those people who are doing the fulfillment, the product development. I mean, it's all of those things. So when we start talking about the shifts going into 2021, what are some of the shifts that you see that are actually here to stay?
Yeah, so I think the interesting thing right now is we've got to be thinking longer term. I think 2020 was a year where it's a lot of like reactive planning. And now we're starting to see some things settle in. It's right. It's like concrete. It takes a little while, but then we start to see, things become a bit settled and a bit firmed up. To me, one of the biggest things that is going to be pervasive across the customer experience is our new desire as a society, or at least acceptance for low and or no touch experiences. Right, that has probably defined 2020 is how can we make something as low or no touch as possible, and that's not just in brick and mortar types of locations. We've seen it, of course, affect how people are doing deliveries, but kind of all along the way, like this is affecting logistics, it's affecting manufacturing, right? How can we either create space or eliminate, places where we often would kind of pack people in or, cause interactions that aren't necessary? So I think that's one of the big trends. It's this bigger question of what are the truly necessary interactions between humans and humans. And I believe we're going to see really good things on the back end, because hopefully what we've discovered is, hey, there are a lot of stuff that if it's unnecessary, it's often probably monotonous, like mundane for people to do. So, we automate it, or we provide some, space in there. where when people are actually interacting with people, it's because there's meaning in that interaction. It's not what was happening, it's about the interaction.
Well, I know when you're talking about that, I'm thinking about the whole simplicity and ease of that. And, you and I had a discussion before we started recording about some, of the acquisitions that are currently happening, and the focus on the customer experience, specifically the digital customer experience, and the simplicity and ease with it. I mean, with Facebook acquiring Customer, with Snap acquiring Voca.ai, Vista acquiring Gainsight. I mean, a few years ago, we saw a huge influx of investment in the customer experience and contact center space because companies started realizing how important retention was. Well, now, man, this is a whole new slew of activity that's happening.
Yeah, it's incredible to see how businesses are rethinking, and finally, like, this is right. You and I have known this because we've been in the space so long. It's like contact centers in particular just tend to be laggards by nature. And I think one of the most positive outcomes of 2020 is it really has forced businesses to accelerate their customer experience transformation. It's really forced them to operate in a place where they were not comfortable, but was probably where customers wanted them to be going anyway.
I think that's a great point. B2B, even, and so what we're really talking about is the B2B engine fueling B2C, right? So it's
Yeah.
all of the solutions, it's all of the, improvements, it's all of the, processes and practices, it's all of those things. And then, we have a customer. So if the B2B stuff doesn't work well, the B2C stuff is going to fail.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So when you start talking about changes, you mentioned, and we were talking, and I made some notes here, talking about hiring, onboarding, training. How are we going to see some shifts in that in 2021?
Yeah. So this is so there's like, I always like think of like, what are the rules of the game, right? Especially when it comes to like running an operation, like what are the rules of the game? And in this, I'm thinking of like, what are the rules of the game as far as like the nature of work that my people have to do, where I have to have my people working, right? The environment or all these limits. And over the past year, the rules of the game have, no, I mean, I want to say they've changed. I feel like they actually got blown up and somebody's written a new book of rules. And so I think that there's a couple big opportunities for us to be thinking about in our 2021 strategies around this idea of hiring and onboarding and training employees. Number one is, we have seen the idea of corporate headquarters or people needing to be in a location. I mean, it's starting to feel like really outdated if you're fixated on this idea that people can't work from anywhere. I mean, it's just a reality. And consistently, I'm talking to contact center or business leaders, and what they're telling me is that their people are more effective, more productive now that they're at home. And so from a hiring standpoint, I think we've got to have some big discussions around, can we expand our talent pools? Can we look outside of, the localities where we maybe had a brick and mortar location and say, we can now hire differently. We can recruit differently. So I think that's important. But with that, we also know, and of course, vaccine conversations, I mean, there's more and more positive light that, we're going to see vaccines sooner than later. But even then, I think we're still going to see a high degree of people maybe, wanting to stay at home. And so, I think thinking through how do we effectively do hybrid training for the contact center. I know a number of people who tried to pause on hiring or training if they could, till they really figured out the whole, remote onboarding experience. But now we're in a place where that you've got to make a decision. I think that's the big thing here around those points, Jim, is, number one, you've got to start making some decisions now. Stop waiting to say, maybe what if it's going to change? Like, we're settling into permanency. We've got to accept that a distributed workforce is what people will be looking for in businesses now more than ever, because they've gotten a taste of what it can be like, right? Having a really good understanding of hybrid, bringing people on either in office or completely remotely, like we've got to figure that out if we haven't figured that out yet. And the bigger piece of it is you've got to be revisiting your training, your quality, all of these things, because as you and I have talked about up to this point, the customer experience is changing. And so the way that we train people to deliver this new type of experience in whatever low, no, or shift in touch we've got to retrain for whatever that new experience is, for sure.
Well, and even as you're talking, I'm thinking about the leader who leads, a contact center team that is in a contact center that is a physical location. It's a totally different set of skill sets when you start talking about being a remote leader.
Yeah.
And we've had chronic problems since, for the past 50 years of an engagement and turnover. And there was a book that was written several years back called Free Agent Nation. And if we don't do a good job, of leading, in this new reality, in this permanency that we're in now, we're actually going to see those numbers actually rise as far as
I mean, you want to talk about setting the stage for the gig economy to really make its way into contact centers. Like that is what we've just seen play out. Like, I think it is probably easier now more than ever for me to become a freelance contact center agent and, do whatever I want with whatever companies I want, from the comfort of home, because that's now a desired skill. It's something that people want to be tapping into.
Or the comfort of my grandma and grandpa's condo.
Hey,
on the beach.
That's it. Toes in the sand, headset on.
I mean, yeah, I think we're going to see the defining of, where is work. I think is something that in 2021 absolutely needs to be part of a customer experience leader's decision set. And also, there are some people who are very valued within the organization from a knowledge perspective, a lot of different, perspectives that, maybe need, more of that connection. And so we have to figure that out too. So the hybrid environments, we need to start moving forward and setting those things in place to make the permanency like you're talking about.
Yep.
Okay. So if we start talking about two things, as far as time and energy, then the reality is that we don't have unlimited, here's one of the things I'm also seeing. Well, with all these changes and stuff, a lot of these companies are saying free webinar, free webinar, free webinar, free webinar. Free has become extremely expensive because we all have the same amount of time. So where am I going to invest my time? Because I only have so much of it. Where do I need to do that as a CX leader?
So here's where my mind's at right now for this, Jim. We know, so the economics of the pandemic have been very interesting. Like, we see some businesses that are thriving in a way they've never thrived before. And the clear impact it's had on other businesses as far as having to shutter their doors or significantly downsize, right? But the reality is, no matter whatever situation you're in, I truly believe that, right? The focus, the time, the energy for customer experience leaders right now has to be on reducing friction in the customer experience. To me, my mind is keenly set on how can we better improve automation? How can we better improve self-service? How do we better and the reason I say that is, we are the do more with less is never going to go away, right? Maximizing the investment in customer experience. I think now that it's got even more light, there's going to be even more attention on how profitable or not is customer experience for us, right? We understand we need to do it, but our financial minds in our businesses, right, is still going to have to reconcile the cost of doing it. And so if I was a customer experience leader, and I know we're still going to be making investments in it, number one place I'd focus is on how do I drive efficiency in my processes? How do I reduce friction in the customer experience? And whether that's, improving automation, improving self-service, that's probably where I'd focus my time, just so that I can free up time and energy to focus on all this training and the hard work that has to be done with our people who are serving our customers.
Well, and as you say that, I do think there is a shift that is required in regards to our thinking in that whole do more with less thing. And as we have to have our minds set on value, because what that means is that there's dual sides of the equation. There's an investment side, and there's a cost removal and reductions. I mean, all those things, have to come into play. And I think for too long in the contact center space, we've just focused in on the more and less, not the value elements of it. And we have to improve our business acumen. I think we're getting pushed to be decision leaders more so than responders. And we've done a great job for the longest time on being responders in regards to people's needs, customers' needs, heck, and executives' needs who want something changed. And I think we need to start pushing back and build our business acumen.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely agree with you there.
Justin, as usual, had a great time with you today. Could you please
Always a pleasure.
share the CX Igniters, how they can get in touch with you?
Easy. Find me on social media at Justin, the letter M, Robbins, Robbins. That's my Twitter handle, Instagram, LinkedIn. You do at Justin M. Robbins, you're going to find me.
And Justin is also a contributor with CX Global Media and the Customer Service Weekly, and you can find him here often. So Justin, thanks, and we're looking forward to seeing you again in 2021.
Cool. Thanks so much, Jim.